Hello and welcome back to the Cardiff Central podcast. The Blue and Blacks have qualified for the Challenge Cup round of 16 with a game to spare. We'll be going over Saturday's win against Racing, who stood out, and debating how to approach Sunday's game at Exeter with a home knockout tie on the line. Elsewhere, there are injuries, kick-off changes, the under-18s are back in action, and there's a Wales Six Nations squad selection on the horizon. Joining me on the panel this week, we've got Fraser Stroud. Fraser, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. I'm a Ultimate Glory podcast. I just come in when we've won a match and I back off when we're losing.
We'll book you up for the next 18 weeks in a row and just make We've got Andrew Ford. Fordy, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, mate.
Good stuff. And Simon Jones. Simon, how are you?
All good. Full of the joys of European rugby.
Well, that's where we'll start then on Saturday afternoon. A rare Saturday afternoon kickoff for Cardiff with 8,500 people packing into the Arms Park to watch Cardiff beat Racing 32-13. Callum Sheedy took advantage of an early Rautamada yellow card, a very early yellow card, to kick in behind for Tom Bowen to score brilliantly. Before Racing came back with two unconverted tries and a penalty to take the lead. But from that point, it was all Cardiff. Rory Thornton and Kieran Azarati went over from close range either side of half time. Two Callum Sheedy penalties, I'll say that again, two Callum Sheedy penalties that we opted to kick gave us breathing space for Cornell Schmidt to put Ben Thomas over for the bonus point score. A couple of three-word thoughts. Reese says, graft pays off. Rob went with kept pressure on. Tom said, crisis. What crisis? Lee said the backs defended well. Steve, Andrew, Joe all went with some variation of great second half. Paul said fastball wins. Reese said more like it. And Rob summarised it by saying, really enjoyed that. Fraser, coming to you first. What were your general thoughts of the game on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I also really enjoyed the game. I thought it was really great fun, and both teams were kind of going at it, trying to play. I thought the first half was kind of it reminded me of the Stad game. I think when we were just a bit under the pump. I'm not really sure how we kind of came out of it, just a point behind. We seemed to be kind of getting a bit dominated physically, struggling a little bit. I mean, their second try, our tackling was awful. But we got that try just before half time, which was brilliant. And then, yeah, I think the second half, I think this might sound very stereotypical, but it felt like it was very French of them. They just seemed to just give up and just say, I don't give a fuck anymore. And like, I'd rather be off on the side having a fag and some wine or something. But fair play to us. I thought we played pretty well in the second half. There were some really standout performances. And you can't say fairer than bonus point, no injuries. Yeah, I thought it was pretty impressive. And I was very happy with the end result.
Fordy, your thoughts?
Yeah, happy to get a win. First half was a little bit of a struggle. Might have been a bit of a different second half had we not got that Thornton try just before half time. But yeah, second half just completely turned the screw, and yeah, Racing's heads looked all over the shop. So yeah, pretty delighted to get the win, and seems like a lot of the players that came in were pretty hungry to put in a good shift after the derbies as well. So yeah, overwhelmingly positive on the whole.
Simon, your thoughts?
Yeah, a good win. Like Fraser said, I really enjoyed the game. To be honest, it was a fun game to watch. Good skills, good pace to it. Rather, I thought a bit of a strange refereeing performance in the first half because I thought, oh, here we go, we're going to have one of those afternoons where we don't get anything, and I think it threw our players for a bit because they then started overrunning up and unders and were so cautious about challenging in the air. They ended up not challenging, and then even when people landed, not tackling them either. So I think there was something about interpretation around that for about 15 minutes we were conceding penalties and weren't quite sure why. And it looked like an interpretation issue from the ref that we weren't getting into. And I think that just meant we weren't competing at points. And I think at points in that first half, I can't remember whether it's just you or Tony mentioned it on the last pod, but we were playing too much, or it might have been Harley, too much ball, too much rugby in our own half, and then getting turned over. And you get turned over on halfway, they can either have a shot at goal or kick deep into the 22. And I think second half we maybe kicked better. And I think it just showed that when we did kick long and had a good chase, we could put them under pressure there. And that's been, I think, something that we've been saying for weeks now, is kick to compete, yeah, absolutely, but you've got to do it in the right areas of the pitch. Kicking long into the 22, even if, not everybody's got a tight head's ability to hit a 50-22 with a ball that's, I still don't know how that ball came out the side of that ruck, but however it got into his hands. But you're then putting pressure on them. And I think it comes back to what we talked about. Take the penalty, take the 3 points, put the scoreboard pressure on them, make them play out of their own 22. And I think in the first half, we were guilty of what we've been this season around, between the 22 and the halfway line, just trying to play a bit too much in that. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's 5 points. It's what we needed. It looked a bit ropey that we'd get there at points in that first half. And even when, that fourth try wasn't quite coming, but you got to be happy with it. As you say, the players who came in played really well. Even the players who came off the bench did. So I think you can be pretty pleased with it. And we're the only Welsh side to win at the weekend.
That's also true. I can't really add too much to that. I agree. The refereeing in the first half was bizarre. Frazier, you're right that the tackling for the second try was abysmal, but how they were even allowed to take that tap penalty. I mean, Tom Bowen was twice penalised for tackling in the air. He just jumped up in the air both times. I know he's short and he's not likely to reach the ball necessarily, but you can't be penalised just for being short, I don't think, on the rugby field. So that they were bizarre decisions. But what I really liked, and point I made on the pod last week, was that whatever was said at halftime against the Ospreys on New Year's Day did not work. We came out and looked worse at the start of the second half. But we went in, that try obviously helps a little bit, scoring right on the stroke of half time. But it was still the case that, we were behind and in a game where we probably were just about second best in that first half. Racing had the majority of that. And then we came out in that first 10 minutes of that second half and, we were shaping to kick and keeping the ball a little bit and in our own 22 trying to test them that way. We were winning penalties, putting pressure on, and then look clinical again when we got into the red zone. It was another tap penalty, which we're not huge fans of, admittedly, but we made that work. And yeah, I just think we grew in confidence from that point onward. And Racing, who made a lot of changes, but bought a lot of guys off the bench who had played a lot of top 14 rugby over the last few weeks, and they were made to look like a team that probably had only just met. I didn't think that the first try they scored was really nice, the way they came around the corner on the Brian side and worked down there. After that, we didn't let them get into any sort of rhythm in the attack at all. Good line speed, good physicality. We were second best physically, but not noticeably. I think that was against the Ospreys. We were like miles off it physicality wise. But against Racing, although they were bigger than us, our work rate made up for the fact that we were being beaten up at the game line. So lots and lots of positives to take. Fraser, Rob asked a question online saying, in contrast to the derbies, what made the difference in attack? And that linked into a question I had on the script, which was sort of, was that back to the performance levels of that first block and just before the festive derbies there? Or is this kind of a new variation now of Cardiff that we're seeing, do you think?
I think the key you mentioned is the clinicality, because we over the Christmas period we did like against the Scarlets, we should have just won that game. There was like 99 times out of 100 we would have won that game. We just missed so many chances and we just didn't take them. Whereas this game we took our chances and we were clinical, and I think our attack was quite fluid. Ben Thomas is brilliant, making lots of breaks throughout the game. And I like Sheedy's kicking and his little touches. He played really well linking the play. But fundamentally, I think the Dragons game was a Dragons game. The Scarlets game we should have won. Ospreys was a bit of an aberration. And I think it was kind of going back to where we are actually at. And then we just took our chances. And I think we also had kind of a calmness and a clear-headedness. So like taking those penalties, which is, kind of bizarre for us, were really good decisions because it just pushed us a little bit further out, made Racing kind of even more demoralised and deflated and kind of lackluster. And then we got that bonus point try. So I think it was good decision making as a team, and then being clinical when we had those opportunities are the kind of things that combine to make it a good performance and for us to come out with a win.
Yeah, the word I'd written next to it was simplicity, which I think goes with that calmness and stuff. Like I still have nightmares about that Scarlets game where we got onto the red zone and Alan Davis tried to do some kind of pullback pass from a yard out from the base of the ruck where nobody was there, and then he just went up the other end. And all we did against Racing was pop it out to a guy with a latch and carry it up and just repeat that. And that's quite effective, as it turns out. 40, there was a couple of three-word thoughts along the same lines. Sean said game management superb. Hugh said points make prizes. Paul said better game management. And Morgan went with they kicked points. Is kicking for goal this new novel idea that Cardiff have created? Do we go back into the World Rugby Hall of Fame for creating this again? But does it show like a sort of increase in leadership and a growth in the leadership to take that option? Because it wasn't a simple, straightforward one for them. They had a good chat about it before going for it.
Yeah, 100%. I think you get the idea that Sheedy's confidence has, particularly with goal kicking, has increased massively, and I think you can credit a lot of that to presumably Lee Halfpenny. And yeah, there was quite a loud cheer on the terraces, I think, when they decided to go for the first kick at goal, and it was the right option. And like Fraser touched on it as well. I think kind of the game management aspect of it is superb. And it's knowing when to kind of kick at goal. And yeah, like Fraser said as well, it kind of frustrated Racing, kind of piling those points on. That I think that certainly had an effect on them losing their heads then as the second half went on. And yeah, hopefully it's something we see going forward used more appropriately. Because I think we get the odd game as well where there's only a matter of points in it going into the last 10 minutes. You think if you can build that lead up earlier, not having to rely on kind of a clutch last minute kick, or for example, like the Scarlets game where we had that kind of ending that none of us wanted, it'd be nice to kind of be more closer. And I think appropriately using kicks at goal is the way forward.
I mean, I think we should thank the Scarlets fans for pointing out that we don't kick goals. Because I think that was a really, key bit of insight that maybe is lodged in the coaching team's minds that now we do, and now we win games. Well, win one game.
Simon, obviously, it wasn't full chat Racing. They rested, I think it was 12 changes to the starting 15, 13 changes to the 23 overall. Does that matter or for us at all, or is it all about us and how we performed on Saturday from our point of view?
I think if you look at what we talked about in the last pod, it was about getting back to winning ways, getting back to basics, showing some shape. It doesn't really matter who we played. It was just about getting the 5 points and getting over the line. I'm not going to go back on a sad lament about Europe and the structure of it, but this is the structure of it now, is that weekend sides are sent out for away games and teams just go to get enough points to try and qualify. So, I don't think it really matters. In the first, we seem to be struggling in first halves at home. I know, the clubhouse draws us in to score the points in the second half, but there's quite a few games this season where we've struggled to really exert control. I think if you look at it, if Cardiff were in the top 14, there's no way we would, we'd get relegated. We haven't got the squad size, the money, or anything like that. So I think you mentioned it, Dan, maybe in the blog or on a social media post about how, even a not full strength Racing side is probably still a very, very strong side. And I think in the first half, certainly, they were powerful. That kind of big front row that they had, it felt like the Pau game where I felt if we can see off their front row, their first choice front row, and their replacements come on, we might get a bit more of a hold in it. And I think that happened. We started to get a bit of the upper hand in scrums at times. I think second half, there were a couple of times where I think we got a bit lucky. There's a couple of times where Beetham or somebody, they were running into nowhere and we got a penalty that I'm still not quite sure what we got, that just took the pressure off. Whereas if we'd been turned over, we might have been. So I think the refereeing helped. But, you win. If we'd lost, it would have been like, oh, you can't even beat Racing's thirds. So we're in a no-win situation. So where you go is, well, actually, was the performance good? Yes. Did we physically stand up to a much bigger side, which was the issue with the Ospreys? Broadly, yes. Did the players that come in show something that makes you think, okay, there's competition for places? Yes, and are we still on? Did we qualify? Yeah, we did. I don't think it matters who you play. It's not up to us to choose Racing's side. That's their decision.
Yeah, and like that Racing side is still on a lot of money. Those players are
Yeah, there's still
very well
internationals in
played,
it. There's
and
still international
yeah,
players.
Demba Bamba, Jordan Joseph have been key guys in very successful France under 20 squad and have gone on to senior games. Roman Tafafanua is obviously well known for in this country for elbowing Aaron Wainwright, but is a very good and big player. Kapoku is a highly rated young English player. I think he's likely to head back to the Prem next year and will probably be in or around England squads quite soon as well. The 9 Carbonneau is also he's their top 14 start in 9. Sam James in the back line played a lot for Sale, being a key player there. So yeah, there was a lot of very good players, and I think it's kind of you take the emotion out of it and go head to head that Cardiff to Racing side. There's a lot of Racing players you'd pick in a combined 23 over those Cardiff players. So just the way that it is when you've got that much money to spend that you can get that sort of depth in.
And Dan, we didn't have to spend anything. No, we're not a lot on Tom Bowen.
That's true.
You know, if you look at the players that we had, we're not spending huge amounts of money to bring those players in or giving them massive contracts, and they're standout players. In that game on Saturday against whether they're kind of hopes for the future or players that have got caps. If you look at who really stood out, I was going to say they were in blue and black. They were in whatever that shade of salmon pink purple is. I don't know. Lilac maybe, I don't know.
That segues nicely onto my next question then, Fraser. That lad Tom Bowen, obviously he's come from nowhere. We've never heard of him before this weekend, but he looked quite good on that left wing. It's obviously quite easy with hindsight, but does that sort of make a mockery a little bit of the selection the last few weeks when he comes back in and performs like that?
I mean, it kind of does, but I guess they might be just trying to manage his time because he's so good, and I guess those kind of players who are so electric and like immediate acceleration kind of thing, I imagine they might be a bit more liable to getting injured, leg injuries or something maybe. So it's kind of managing that time. He's still really young. But yeah, he's just he is electric, and that first 5 meters, the change of direction, the initial pace that gets past people, and just the pace in general is unbelievable. And I know there's a lot of talk about him being in the air, not being very strong, and obviously that's never going to be his game. But I think he does compete enough, and he does, gets his arm in the air. I think he won a couple in the air maybe, or at least got the ball back on our side. But I do think he's just obviously a tremendous talent, and I can't wait to see him play some more. So obviously want him to be starting every week, but I guess you do have to manage players like that, and especially at that age, just to give him time to bed into the team. And we do have a really competitive back line. Someone else is missing out, and it could be Mason Grady didn't play, and he's obviously a massive player for us, or can be. So it is a tricky choice as to who starts. Ewan Stevens was also good. It is tricky.
Yeah, we had sorry, Simon, just quickly. We had a question from Glenn about do you think Bowen should be purely in the first team now because he noticed he was in the Rags team last week. But I think what Fraser says is exactly right there, that he's 19. He's still so young. And what we don't want to be is sat here in 18 months, 2 years on this podcast going, oh, Tom Bowen was good. Shame about those injuries, though, isn't it? In a maybe similar way that we sort of talk about Theo Cabango a little bit at the moment as well. And, Corey Allen, the one who we played a lot and got a lot of injuries. So, yeah, I'm sure Cornel Van Zyl is tempted to pick him every single week and just play him 80 minutes every week. But you've got to be sensible. Sorry, Simon, you were going to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, under the high ball, he makes a mess of things. That, he kind of he gets there quickly, and he's not afraid of a tackle.
No.
So he can get there. So when someone catches it, he can tackle them, or he gets there quickly, so he can get up and challenge. And at least then somebody's coming down in a bit of a heap, or the ball's bobbling about. So I think it's not clean. It takes, but you're probably not expecting that from. I've said on social media, I thought his try was incredible. He comes from so far behind that fullback, even allowing that fullback to turn, and the fact that their wing was off. He comes from a fair distance behind him, and then when he gets the ball, he just decelerates slightly, like he's going to go inside. And the confidence just to go, I'm going to take you in like a 2 meter gap on the outside because I can. At 19, I mean, that's some confidence to go. Actually, I'm not afraid. I'll back myself there. There aren't many, wings at that age with the build that he is that would just go, yeah. Everybody's instinct was he will swerve inside, and just that little hint of going there and slowing down a bit, and then just put the afterburners on. I think he's just a very, very special player. And if you look at it, Ewan Stevens was on his shoulder. Either of them could have got that ball, and he could have popped it inside, and Stevens could have scored. So I think there's something about those two as a wing option, and it's a good challenge for Grady and Josh Adams. For you got to keep on top of it, because these players will come in. I don't understand. I understand game management, but I think Bowen should have been picked against the Dragons at home. I can understand totally maybe the Ospreys game heavy pitch wouldn't necessarily have been one for him, but I think you look at it now and him and Adams are our first choice wingers. You just look at the ability of them to score. I think Stevens is really good. I thought he's excellent again on Saturday, but they've got to show themselves. I think it's a good position to be in. But we're not just getting the ball into his hands like Wales used to do with Shane Williams, or we've been guilty of doing it sometimes when we've got talent out wide and go, just beat 4 players now. We're putting the ball in behind and I thought we used the pace on the wings really well to pin Stad back. So yeah, I think it was outstanding on Saturday.
There was quite a comedy moment though, where he had that second break where his opposite winger dropped the ball and he nipped in and picked it up and ran on, and then he puts a really nice kick in where the covering defender's coming across, and you thought, oh, that's perfect. And he's so fast that only Stevens can keep up with him. So when he's on the other side of the pitch, there's no one else within half a mile chasing that kick down. You just thought, oh yeah, that's great. There must be somebody on the inside, but no, he's just run away from everybody else. maybe that point he's too fast.
Was it their outside half that made the tackle on him?
It was a good, yeah. He had a nice angle, but it was good cover.
It was a textbook of using the touchline as another defender, because how he hunted him down, that was the only angle he could have made it on.
Yeah, good. The experience of Gibert. Fordey, sticking with the individual performances on the weekend, Rory Thornton, not somebody who I don't think we naturally think is going to be one who fronts up to French packs necessarily, but he hasn't necessarily been first choice throughout this season, hasn't played a huge amount, but when he has, is he playing some of the best stuff that we've seen him produce for Cardiff?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think was it the Ulster game was his 100th cap, I believe. And yeah, he had a very good game that day. And since then, anytime he's kind of popped up, whether it's off the bench or starting like he did on Saturday, I think he's stepped up another level this season. And I do wonder if it's kind of the influence of we've never really been blessed with a great second row stocks. But at the moment, I think Thornton's probably learning a lot from the likes of McNally, George Knott, and probably Teddy Williams as well to an extent. And they're all quite different players in their own right. So kind of, I reckon that's probably had an influence of him stepping up a bit more. But I'm really pleased to see how well he's playing, especially there was a lot of hype around him when he was Wales under-20s captain. So it's kind of nice to see him. He looks like he's enjoying his rugby as well. And yeah, against a team like Racing, it's nice to have a player like Rory Thornton kind of put in a good shift.
He is such a good line-out operator, a maul guy. Like, I think underrated probably outside of Cardiff for just how good he is in those areas and how much he offers us in there. Like, there was a little disruption he did in the first half where he just reaches a long lever over and slaps the ball down when there's Racing and trying to set a maul up. And you're like, oh, that sort of dark art stuff, which we never do. Everyone does it to us and we never do it. It was perfect. Simon, another player, somebody we've discussed a lot on this podcast, Jacob Beetham, finally got his chance to start to 15 again. How do you think he went?
I don't know. Is the short answer. Is that I saw I think Wild Rugby saying he was one of the better players. I don't know whether I've just got high expectations. I think it might be he's not playing regularly. He still looks a little uncertain at times. And I think probably I expect him to claiming more of the high balls than maybe he does. But that's based on who you're against as well and where the ball is, I guess. But he needs game time, is my view. I think the absolutely solid performance, great 50-22, shows what he can bring to the side. A real, massive boot. So yeah, it feels like work in progress. Be interesting to see whether he plays this week as well. I think it'd be good to get a bit of continuity for him and get that under the belt. But I still want to see a bit more. There was part of me that was thinking Matty Young played really well out in France. Was it an opportunity for him? Would we have seen a little, with that back three? Can understand why you maybe want, I don't know the height of Matty Young, but maybe a bit more solidity between two smaller wingers. But I don't know. It's still waiting to see something, I guess. But what do I know? I don't know anything about rugby, really. I just come on here to talk. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what you all thought, because I'm just on the fence a little bit about it, I guess.
I thought it was one
Oh,
of. Oh, sorry, go on, Fordey.
no, no, you go ahead, Fraser.
I just thought it was one of the best games I've seen him play since he's, well, like in a recent memory, to be honest. From my perspective, I was watching TV, it's a different perspective, but I thought he played really well in parts. Definitely, he obviously he's really physical. I really like that. Like his physicality is impressive. The tackle he put in on there, I think it's number 12, was unreal, and I think he puts himself about, which I think is really a pretty unique skill set for somebody who's a 15. He is generally like a physical threat. I think his kicking, yeah, obviously he did that 50-22. I think he's got that in the locker, and he showed a bit more about it. In the air, I agree. He's not dominating people, but he is really getting up there again and properly competing. And I was quite impressed with him, to be honest, in this game. I think he might be someone who needs to be given the confidence, so like given more games. So and then he'll build on that. So maybe he's a bit of a confidence player. And if someone puts that trust in him and like, right, you showed some glimpses in this match, let's do it again, and he might build on that. But yeah, I was quite impressed by him, to be honest.
Did you get a conversion as well
Yeah,
for Ben Thomas's try? Because I didn't see
yeah.
the conversion. I didn't know who got it. I assumed it was Ben Thomas, but apparently it's Beetham.
It was a bit before, I think it was like a few minutes before his 50-22, where Racing were on the attack and they put a kick through, and we're kind of all over the shop, and Beetham just comes in and sweeps up and boots the ball away, and it's a really good clearance. And if you add as well the 50-22, I just kind of think someone like that, is he maybe? I think wasted's probably the wrong word, but like I kind of think he is probably best suited to fullback. And obviously you've got the whole thing of, I think Winnett is our starting fullback, and obviously got Matty Young coming through, and Beetham has played outside centre and on the wing, and he's covered 12 as well. So I'm not sure what the way forward is with him, but I do think he played very well. And the issue with, I think we touched on the ref, and it seemed to be that in that first half in particular, anytime any of our players went up in the air, there was one bit where Beetham just gets basically the Racing player just completely overruns it and takes Beetham out, and the ref just says play on.
Yeah.
And then we it's completely fair competition, and we were getting penalised. So I don't know. I don't understand how the aerial aspect of the game was ref on Saturday, and I think that probably did count against him a bit. But he is usually solid, and he was still disrupting quite well. And to be fair, I think Carbonell, the Racing scrum half, some of his kicks were brilliant. So I think it's a bit of a different kind of. It's a bit hard to compare his kind of aerial game in a game like that.
It'd be interesting to see what they do now. Like, we'll pick our team at the end of the pod, but I wouldn't like to put any money on what Van Zil's going to do, because there's so many different narratives around that back three about players who need game time, like Beetham. I think he would massively benefit from starting all of the next three games at fullback, not being picked by Wales probably. I don't think that would be too helpful for him at this point, and just playing for us at 15. But then at the same time, you've got Winnett there, and then on the wings, you'd love to see Bowen and Stevens continue that, but Grady will need game time as well. how Leinster fans have done this for the last decade, I don't know. There's like too much depth. I don't think we got too much of it. We'll send some people on loan or something. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge certainly. Just for me on Beetham, I sort of somewhere in between all you guys, and that he did a lot well. But I sort of agree with Simon that like his ceiling is high. It is so high, and not through any fault of his own, I don't think, but he's not close to it yet. And you just sort of are desperate for him to get that so much closer to that ceiling. And but then coming back to he needs the game time to get there, and can we afford to give him that game time or not? I don't know. It is the massive conundrum of Cardiff at the moment. I think in trying to get we need more games. Maybe set up a midweek league and get some people in there or something.
Well,
But
I think you're right, Dan. I guess I'm just waiting for that statement performance
mm,
that kind of goes that I've arrived. That we've seen, other young players come through and do. And again, maybe it's just players develop in different ways at different paces. And we've seen Tom Bowen come on and just blow us all away. Um, Even Cam Winnett, when he came into the team, straight away scored the try against Harlequins in that Misfits game. But you could see why he was being picked and why there was a buzz around him. And I think you can see why Beetham's being picked. You can see the attributes he brings. I think I'm just waiting for that all to come together, probably in a performance that you're like, wow, yeah, absolutely stand out. You saw it like with Ben Thomas as he was coming through, what he could be, and then those performances started to come in terms of actually, yeah, he's quality in that inside centre. So I think it's probably a bit unfair because he hasn't had a run of games, but I think, Dan, that's what I'm waiting for, that moment which I think will hopefully come, where you're just like, wow, this is a real selection dilemma up full back, or we've got we've got options, but there's a real contest there. Who would you pick? And I don't think we're quite there with that yet.
a couple of three-word thoughts on another player who performed well on the weekend. Charlie said Smith looks promising. Ben said Smith's the real deal. Hugh said Smith the destroyer. James said Cornell Schmidt starts. Fraser, I mean, we've been quite blessed with previously unheard of South Africans who've immediately become cult heroes, pretty much, with Tina Stabia and Cornell and Johan Mulder. Is Cornell Schmidt in that bracket after that performance on Saturday?
I think he might be, to be honest. I mean, he was already a cult hero because of his supreme intelligence, but yeah, I was kind of shocked that he was so good on the weekend. To be honest, I thought he'd be a bit more of just like a put him in there. He'll be solid, not do too much. But I think he showed some real glimpses. I mean, it's that proper South African. It's such a South African thing to have, but like back. Well, we've dealt with backs players just so physical and just so love that aspect of the game, and it is such a South African trait. And he obviously displayed that on the weekend. He got absolutely smashed by I think they're number 12, but then he came back with a number of like big tackles, big hits. He just clearly loves that side of the game. And then he had that deft offload to Ben Thomas for one of our tries in the lead up to one of our tries, which I thought was, again, didn't see that coming. So he's kind of, I think, a little bit. I find it a little bit similar to Mulder. When he first joined, I was uncertain as to where his quality was. I was like, he could kind of slow start, not sure if he is that good a player. And I think this match on the weekend kind of showcased where he can go and the ability he does have. So I was pleasantly surprised. And I think, yeah, I wouldn't be anxious seeing him starting in a team. Whereas before, I'd be like, okay, he's like filling a gap. But now after that performance, I could see him being like, yeah, I can see why we're doing that. He adds an element to our team, which yeah, I love to see.
He adds a variety, doesn't he? In terms of Millard is a wing, outside centre that will challenge you on the outside with his pace, whereas Smith feels much more of a outside centre, inside centre that will come in, on an angle, coming back in and offload. So I think, tactically, it offers you different things. And if you can bed him in and bed in like Ben Thomas and players around him, you've got some really good options there if you want to change the game and change how you're playing. I put in the chat, I was really interested in the interview with him afterwards where he talked about how Ben Thomas was in his ear for the game, talking constantly talking, and how his understanding of what that 13 role is and how it's different to the 12. It was, obviously we know he's a well-educated man, but it was quite an interesting angle that you put on it in terms of what do I do at 13 and what do I do at 12, and they're very different positions and you need different things from me, and I understand that. And saying that he got the offload away because he could hear Ben screaming to him that he was on his shoulder. So that communication as well is really important.
I'd just like to see us get the ball in his hands a bit more, to be honest. I think it's been an issue a little bit, not with personnel necessarily, Millard, just the way our attack set up. We just haven't quite got the ball in the 13 hand enough to straighten that channel and really ask questions of the defence. But especially now with a guy like Schmidt, who is obviously physical and can cut the line and break a line, but can also cut that line and truck it up and go into contact. I think we've got to start using it in the same way that we were when Lilo was there, and that was sort of our primary attacking position. It's slipped away from that and is probably, I haven't got the stats, but I would suggest Millard has touched the ball the least out of any of our backs, or the 13 position has touched the ball the least out of any of our backs this season. And the only other thing to say about Schmidt is it was a real disappointment they pulled him off because he didn't get a chance of innovation, really. I didn't actually see him go off. He just sort of snuck off after the try, and I think he would have had a really nice ovation from the South Stand after that performance. Fordey, another player who had an impact in the second half, was Ellis Bevan. Up till now, the scrum half position, I think we've sort of just had Mulder starting, Davis on the bench, like pretty much penned in most weeks. But did he do enough in that half hour or so to disrupt that pecking order, do you think?
Yeah, I think I've discussed it before. It's kind of it's a difficult balance to have with the scrum halves at the moment, especially someone like Aled Davis is kind of your sensible conservative option, whereas both Bevan and Mulder are quite nippy, flashy, quite lively scrum halves. But I was really impressed with Bevan when he came on. I think you highlighted Dan on Twitter the little defensive moment he had at the line out, where there's kind of so many options. And he kind of rides one tackle and then tackles the other player straight into touch. And I think that was really impressive. I had a bit of a case of white line fever towards the end, but given the scoreline already, bonus point in the bag, I think we'll forgive him on that. But yeah, I think definitely would like to see him get involved because he has kind of had a bit of a bad pack of cards dealt to him. So I think it'd be nice to see him have a few more run-outs, even if it's off the bench. And at the end of the day, it's just great for depth to have three kind of good scrum halves in the squad.
There was a really nice piece of play from him as well, which both of them, I think, gets the turnover in our own 22, and Bevan's in at first receiver, and he puts the left foot spiral in, and it lands sort of halfway into the Racing 22, and James puts it out for a huge gain. And having that boot, I think, is massive as well at times for us, because we don't have, like, Beetham's got it on him, but in the team that's played most of this season, we don't have an obvious huge, like, can hang it up in the air for 5 seconds and land it in the opposition 22 type job. But no, it was nice to see him trusted coming on early as well. I think that's been a little frustration of from Bevan, is that he's had 10 minutes maybe here or 5 minutes there, but to see him come on at 50 minutes was quite a nice sight. Simon, my last question from Saturday then, maybe a slightly negative tone, but does that win and that performance sort of make it all the more annoying looking back on the derbies? Like, if we played like this, we could have had 3 wins probably.
Yeah, but I think we've just got to let it go. We've got to let it go because you've got to look forward, and I think there were still bits in that performance that reflected those games at times. Being out muscled for their second try and dropping off tackles, looking a bit static sometimes on attack and not quite sure what to do. So that, there were still those bits in there. But the difference is when we needed to, we scored. Our tight heads can't stop scoring. So next time we have a tap penalty, give it to a tight head, whoever it is, because they're like a tractor being pulled over the line. We didn't need Sebastian's try-scoring heroics this week, but, Azza came up with one. So yeah, it is frustrating, but it's Cardiff. It wouldn't be Cardiff if we weren't sitting here being frustrated about having the talent. I would say, I know we've said it probably every week, how good Ben Thomas is at the moment. How much his ball carrying has come on. Over the last 2 seasons, where we're all kind of always a bit, even Cardiff fans, but he's a bit lightweight. He's a ball playing 12. He's not kind of like a Jamie Roberts, kind of crash ball 12, and he still isn't. But his lines of running is so much better that he's making ground. Whether he's targeting weak shouldered, whether he's just physically stronger, he made ground against a pretty big, strong Racing side. That the last few games, I don't think I've seen him stopped on the gain line much when he's taken that ball up. And he's got good feet, and again, just glides when he goes. He's quick as well. So, I think that's been a positive throughout those games. So yeah, it's frustrating. We got to close the book and just go, okay, that's in the past. We get the Scarlets and the Ospreys later in the season for revenge over that, but we did what we needed to do, confidence-wise, I think.
Talking about Ben Thomas, I think it reminds me of like Lee Byrne. It's like effortless style, and he's just got he finds the line and just glides through it. Or like, and yeah, like you said, he's not trucking it up, but he's got enough power behind the run to get past the tackle. But it's just the intelligence of like where he's running at, or the space that he's running into, and it just looks the way he runs. It just looks effortless, like he's not making any not running that quickly, but he's just making such big breaks, like in huge moments in the game. Yeah, I think he's been amazing, like you said, over the whole Christmas period. But again, on Saturday, he's just he seems like he's really coming into his own. It's very impressive.
Good stuff. Any more from the Racing game on the weekend?
Oh, can I just say, I'm really glad that they started playing rock music and metal now that the card had come out to, I think, For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica. And I've for years gone on about we should stop with all this Euro pop that they come out to and go back to rock music. And they have. So I think that is why we're having a better season as well. So thank you to the club. Not listening to me moan about it all the time, but I used to love it when they played Thunderstruck by AC/DC when the players came out. So but I've just forgotten about it until this point that they've reintroduced rock music in the entry.
There's nothing wrong with Sandstorm. Sandstorm's a good song.
Well, shout out friend of the pub, Rob Toogood there. Also,
Yes.
shout out to him on his impressive French. He'd obviously been learning and was desperate to use it at every announcement on the weekend. So pumped out a good amount of French. Any other business from Racing? All good. My only other note is just to congratulate Liam Belcher on his 100th appearance. A real story of like resilience and character there, from coming through the academy, being released, going to the Dragons, actually coming back from the Dragons, something that not many do. They don't get out of that bottomless pit of players, but coming back for the now defunct Celtic Cup, a competition that was just before COVID, which I wish they'd bring that back, to be honest, because that was quite handy development wise and quite fun as well. But has done his time as sort of third and fourth choice, and then took his opportunity, and is now obviously a key player and leader within that group. It's nice to see him with his family, and a good win to celebrate his 100th appearance. Right, onto the news then. Only a few bits of news. Bad injury news for Talupe Faletau. He picked up a calf injury against the Ospreys on New Year's Day. He's going to be out for a few weeks. Cornel Van Zyl said he's likely to miss the start of the Six Nations. He obviously had his customary 2 to 3 games and then back into the physio room, as it seems to be now the case for him at this stage of his career. Off the field stuff, Wales Online reporting that the deadline for final bids for Cardiff passed on Monday. WRU are now going to evaluate those, which could take anywhere from sort of 2 days to 6-7 weeks, who knows. But lots of rumours circulating, nothing concrete, though. I don't think anybody really knows exactly which way this is likely to go. It's not even really confirmed who the final two are. I think Martin Ryan's consortium has confirmed one is them, but the other one, whilst believed to be Y11, is not 100% definite. Some say that their interest has cooled. I think Steph Thomas said that on the Wales Online podcast last week, but then other rumours will say that WRU board have already accepted their offer and it's definitely going to happen. So who knows on that one? We hopefully will hear by the end of the week, if not the start of next week. And then 2 kick-off times changing. The club have listened to feedback on the sheer amount of 7:45s that we've had this season, and have managed to get the Leinster game on Friday the 27th of February and the Ospreys game on Friday the 24th of April from 7:45 to 7 p.m. kickoffs. I know they were hopeful of getting that Ospreys game to the Saturday, but obviously hasn't quite come off from the TV, I imagine, blocking that. good to see the club listening to supporter feedback. Absolute nightmare for those of us who don't live in Cardiff and are trying to get to Cardiff Town Centre on a Friday evening. I'm obviously in a small minority, but if you would like to join my campaign to move them back to 7:45 kickoff, that would be great. But no, I think it's good that the club have acted on it, as Jamie Muir's piece in the programme on the weekend mentioned as well, that he would like to bring his family and can't. So it's obviously a frustration held across the club on that one.
It's good to see the CF10 Trust as well
Yeah.
over the ownership stuff getting, being out there on the media as well. It wasn't so long ago, whereas if this had been happening, there wouldn't have been a supporter voice at all, or it would have just been go down to Queen Street and find some people who look like they like rugby and ask them about Cardiff. So really good to see Lynn on. I think she's on Radio Wales on Saturday. I saw it being interviewed, and then I think on BBC News last night.
Yeah, she was on the Wales Today last night. Yeah.
But yeah, great to see the supporter voice being heard and also acted on with those fixtures. Hard as it is for you, Dan.
I'll get over it.
Those of us that are closer to the Arms Park are quite pleased.
Good stuff, right? If you're enjoying what you're listening to at this point of the podcast, do feel free to subscribe, like the episode on whatever podcast platform you're on. If your podcast platform allows a comment, feel free to leave us a comment. And if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the Rap channel. Plenty of podcasts coming out from all the Welsh clubs, the Rap guys and the SRC guys will be back once that's up and running. And go on to our sister channel, the Global Game Line, as well. Had a look on there. There is a mountain of rugby content on there. Saffers, Irish people, French rugby pods, all sorts going on. The URC Rewind, and I'm sure the women's pod will be back up and running soon. I noticed they were back in camp this week ahead of the Women's Six Nations on the horizon. Rags Corner then is a quiet one. As I mentioned, no SRC at the moment, so no game for the Rags on the weekend. They have got a friendly, though, that game against Wales under-20 on Friday night, 7:30 at the Arms Park. Have confirmed that season tickets are valid for that one, so get down and get some value out of your season tickets if you're around. If you haven't got a season ticket, tickets are available from the Cardiff Rugby website. Bit of pathway stuff. The Under-18 Regional Age Grade Championship kicked off again for its second part of the season on Sunday. Cardiff Under-18s beat Ospreys Under-18s 34-12. So they're now play 5-1-5 with 5 try bonus points at this part of the season. Tries from Evan Hughes, Will Adams and Harry Kinsey, as well as a hat-trick for Caelan Edwards. 4 points from the boot of Isaac Manning-Burke. Next up for them, they go up north to RGC on Sunday to face them in Colwyn Bay. Next week then, the Wales squad for the Six Nations will be announced. Steve Tandy's first Six Nations squad since taking over as Wales head coach. Plenty of time to discuss that as the competition gets a bit closer. But for now, I thought we'd just have a flick through which Cardiff players you might think are in the running and maybe some who are not so much in the running this time. Fraser, coming to you first. Any names that stick out either way for you from this blue and black squad?
I think you've got your usuals, or like people who'll definitely be in there. I think Azarati and Ben Thomas will definitely be in there. I think I'd advocate for like someone like Evan Lloyd's getting a chance again. I know he's been in the squad before, but I think he's an international class player, or the potential to be a really high level international class player. So I'd probably advocate for him. And then obviously you got the debate on Tom Bowen. Does he get given a chance? Is he too young? That kind of thing.
Would you go for him, or would you leave him with the 20s?
I would maybe give him another season of the 20s maybe, and allow. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think he's still 19 years old. He's still very very young, and he can develop it a bit more. I mean, I'd love to see him play for Wales, and it would be really exciting. But he might just go to the Wales squad and then not get in any of the matchday squads, and just be, which would be beneficial. But I think, yeah, I don't think he will get picked.
Fordey, any names on your list?
I imagine it'll probably be quite similar to the autumn squads, but I think possibly you could see maybe there was certain players picked in the autumn because of that 4th test against South Africa. So the English players weren't available. So there might be a bit of chopping and changing there. But I can't, off the top of my head, I can't really think of anyone in particular who'd probably be dropped. But I think there's a case to see whether someone like Winnett might be included, especially if he plays this weekend. could well be a bit of an audition for him. And I would argue if he was starting regularly, I'd argue that James Botham would probably have a good claim to be in the Wales squad because player of his caliber as well. And since he's come back when he has played, he's looked very, very good. But I think it might count against him given that he's not really starting at the moment.
Simon, any
Yeah,
further
none,
advances? None.
none. I don't think any of our players.
Cardiff,
They come
Cardiff back.
back
We
and it
don't
takes
do
them ages to
international
get back
breaks.
up to speed. Not,
Everybody available for Leinster.
yeah, exactly. I think I do question the days. It feels like the days have gone where the Gatland squads where players would be lifted by being in camp with Wales. I'm not convinced that is the same. It's absolutely a higher intensity environment and a higher. It's the pinnacle of the game. But yeah, I mean, I think someone like Tom Bowen. I agree. I'd keep him in the 20s because you could see him being picked, and they're not setting the world alight because of structural issues within the Welsh, within the Welsh attack. And then suddenly it's like, kind of a Tom Pridey situation where kind of burst on the scene was meant to be the next big thing, and then was just seemingly quite badly handled, and kind of disappeared, sadly. So I would protect him as much as I could from that, particularly because it's going to be I know we've got 3 games at home, but those 2 away games, it's going to be a tough. We're not through the woods with a structure or with a confidence or anything like that. So it's going to be a tough Six Nations for us. So I would try to protect some younger players. I think if he's at the 20s, he can still go into camp, can still see what it's all about, still experience that. But I don't feel at the moment our players would go into camp and come back better players. You look at Ben Thomas, went into camp, played a couple of games, was seen as not good enough, come back and he's been brilliant for us. It felt like out of that environment, he's back home. So I think, I jokingly say none. I really, want Cardiff players to be recognised and get recognition at the highest level. But it is disruptive for us in terms of the flow, and I think it doesn't help. What we've done what we've experienced over Christmas either. You wonder, are some of those selections about Wales squads seeing players rather than who we want, going out to win. So yeah, I think I agree. I think we'll see the same number of players, and good luck to them.
Yeah, just I've written down. I think there's a couple of definites, not too many, but Azarati, Mann, Ben Thomas, Josh Adams, I think will almost certainly be there. I suspect one of Belcher and Lloyd will make it in the hooker stocks. I think maybe unlikely both. And I agree with Fraser that I'd love to see Evan Lloyd. I suspect we'll do the team this weekend. I suspect we'll see Evan Lloyd start for Cardiff this weekend, and that Belcher started for his 100th at home last weekend, and there was a bit of fiddling with the selection for that and when players would have played and get rested. But if Evan Lloyd has a really good game on Sunday, if he does start, he could definitely force his way in. A bit like there's quite good hooker stocks in Wales at the moment. Obviously, Derry Lake is 100% in. But even for somebody like Lake, there's a massive question mark over that line-out throw-in over the last few weeks. Like it's regressed, if anything, recently, and that's something that they'll have to consider. Ollie Burrows has done well at the Dragons. Ryan Elias is coming into a bit of form with the Scarlets, although whether it's actually that possible to come into any form in that Scarlets team at the moment is another question. But yeah, it's a competitive area. And then I think Sheedy probably makes it as a continuation from the last squad. No Costello, Jared Evans not. Well, he's playing a 12 a bit for Harlequins, I think, which, as we saw when we picked him there once against the Saracens, is not always his best position for him. But yeah, we've not got much depth at fly half, so he gets in. And then Simon, maybe the player you were referring to with selections over the festive period, but Mason Grady, I think, is the real interesting one to watch from a Cardiff perspective, because man of the match against Dragons, tough outing against the Ospreys is probably the diplomatic way of referring to his performance there. Always tough on the wing for a Cardiff player against the Ospreys in winter. But the undeniable thing about Grady is that he's like 6'5" and
Yeah.
110 kg, and Wales needs size, and so whether that sways it for him. If he does then get selected, where they pick him, how they use him, do they see him as a winger? Do they see him as an outside centre? Which outside centre is a real problem position for Wales. There's good players there, but they obviously do not know who their best outside centre is. I don't think at the moment. Max Llewellyn injured, I think, for at least the start of the Six Nations, who played there throughout the autumn when all the squad was available. You've got Joe Roberts, Louis Hennessy, Owen Watkin back for the Ospreys, but I don't look at any of them and sort of think, yes, you're definitely my preferred option at 13 at the moment. So, yeah, lots of
If
question
anybody can
mark.
get if anybody can get the best out of him, it'll be Jockey,
Yeah,
because he did last season. It's not just his size; it's how you use him when you bring him into play. And was it last season or the season before where he kind of started to make a name for himself? It was because he's been brought into midfield, not being given like four men to beat on the wing, even though he can run through people. So I think if anybody can reignite that, it's Jockey. I'd be really surprised if he's not selected, and it will cause a great big fuss about why he's selected. But as you say, the size and the presence that he has, if used correctly, and I don't think we've quite worked out how to. I think we've lost our way with him a little bit, and hopefully we can get that back, because he is such an asset on the top of his game. He can be unplayable, and he can bring others in and look superb. So I think maybe contradict what I've just said. Going to Wales will help him a bit back with Jockey, working through some of those things.
Yeah, I think he has a tendency to look for contact and try and bump people off. If
Yeah,
unless with the right, like you said, with the right guidance, like if he accesses a little bit of space, he's obviously through that because he's fast and massive. But I kind of see him, yeah, sometimes just be like, right, I'm going to run this guy over, and it doesn't always work because you can tackle low, he's over. He's like, so I think yeah, he does need a bit of that guidance, and we're still trying to look for that. So yeah,
as I
maybe.
said, I'm sure he was just looking for Tom Rogers. Tom Rogers discovered every time he got the ball, he'd like look, look. Oh right, there you are. I'm going to run through you today. So yeah,
good stuff. Right, yeah. Well, I think it's Tuesday. The squad is announced. We will cover it properly in next week's pod. Then hopefully it does get announced before we record the pod. Otherwise, we'll be having the same conversation again next week, which kind of going to make. But for that, now we'll move on to the final part of the pod, looking ahead to this weekend's final game of the Challenge Cup pool stages. Cardiff travel to Exeter. Sunday, 1 o'clock kickoff, again on Premier Sports. This one, so you have to put your hand in your pocket if you're not going down to Devon. Weather, I've just written wet, because that's all it is, just raining forever now, basically, in January. Head to head, we've only actually played 3 times in competitive games, which I think feels more because we played them quite a lot in pre-season over the last few years. But we're 3-0 down. They'd done the double over us in the 2013-14 Heineken Cup, and then I don't know whether it even counts as a competitive game. Maybe we're 2.5-0 down because we went there in the Anglo-Welsh Cup when it was a bit of a sort of cannon fodder competition in the end, and lost 62-25 in November 2016, which, if I recall correctly, we had a couple of like rags guys and semi-pro guys involved that day, so we obviously weren't taking it 100% seriously. Exeter have had a bit of a renaissance this season after a few tricky years. They're third in the Prem, 6 wins from 9. They had a trickier Challenge Cup campaign so far with 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss. They're fourth in the pool, a point behind us, which means the state of play for us and them this Sunday is that we're both qualified for the round of 16. But if you want a home tie, it's basically whoever wins on Sunday will get that home tie. The loser will come fourth in the pool, likely, and will be on the road for the round of 16. How they will approach it, Exeter, it's possible that they may pick a slightly changed team. So looking at their team selections over the last few weeks, they went with a very changed team to face. I think it was Racing they played in the first round of games. Picked a very changed team there. Then they went strong against Stad, where they drew. Went strong again in the Prem games across the festive period, and then continued with basically a first choice 23, where they went and played last weekend, or Stad last weekend, my mistake. Let me get my fixtures right there. They went changed against Cheetahs in the first round. They went strong against Racing in the second round, which is where they drew, and then they went strong again last weekend against Stad, where they lost, I think, by a point right to the death. So They are likely to change it up, I suspect, this weekend because they then host Bristol in the Prem the following Saturday at home, which will be a game I'm sure that is marked on many calendars down that way before the season gets underway. The big debate then from a Cardiff point of view is how do we approach it? It was a question I put out on our socials and just three responses to show the wide range of opinions that you can acquire on this. Rob says, I don't think we'll win in Exeter, so I'd rest as many as possible and go young as we did earlier in the competition. I'd save all the first team players for Benetton, which is a huge game. Obviously, we play Benetton in the URC at home the following week. Sid says he's not a fan of squad rotation. Pick your best 23 need to make winning a habit, and questions whether last Saturday was actually our best 23 to stick with them. And then Charlie goes with somewhere in the middle. He wants to see a mixed strength team for Sunday. Would rather go strong for Benetton and target the lead, but Benetton can rotate this weekend as they're already through, and so will be strong for us. Then there's a fourth opinion of Harley of this parish who says go big or go home, and then concedes that's mainly because it's his local game and he just wants to see us pick a really good team to play. Fraser, coming to you first. What would you do if you were Cornel Van Zyl? Are you going full chat 23, mix and match, or are you resting everybody and taking a bunch of teenagers down there?
I think I'm going mix and match. I'm playing, in the middle. I think, yeah, like you said, Exeter probably won't field their strongest team if they'll probably almost definitely be focusing on the Bristol match, which is a 6-day turnaround. So they probably will rest quite a few players. So I wouldn't go full youth team kind of thing. So I'd mix and match, and I think we do have the squad to rotate a little bit in some areas. So yeah, I think that would be the way I'd look at it is maybe some youngsters in there, but still quite a strong team, and that we should go to beat them because I think we've got a good chance based on what they're going to be focusing on. And yeah, it continues the momentum, and it means we go into the Benetton game kind of we shrugged off the Christmas period entirely, so now we're back into that mentality of we're a successful winning team, and then we can continue that.
Fordey, which way are you going?
Yeah, I think it should be a kind of a mix and match team, probably quite similar to the one from Saturday. I think if you look at it from the perspective of, for example, someone like Mason Grady, he doesn't feature this weekend to save him for Benetton. That's over 3 weeks of no rugby, I believe. Yeah, um, which probably won't do him any good, especially if he's in the Wales squad. Then there's 3 weeks of no rugby, and then 2 weeks of no rugby going into the Six Nations. Obviously, that's kind of the national team's almost irrelevant to this whole thing anyway. But I think, yeah, I'd go quite similar to the team on Saturday. Have a few players kind of drop in, and again, the Ulster game at the end of the month, you're going to have some players who will be available for that, get some game time, so that they're not rusty going into that game. So, yeah, definitely a bit of a mix and match, similar to Saturday.
Simon, who I'm wondering if you know you're on mute. Well, as I'm looking at you about to speak. What way would you go?
Sorry, my children were leaving for football, and all I could hear them was shouting, shouting at each other. Um, yeah, I agree. I agree with Fordey and Fraser. I think you do go. We've still got a chance of a home quarter final. As you say, Dan, it's not like a particularly happy hunting ground for us, Exeter. So it's going to be tough. It always is. I think all I only thought is that maybe we take the most physical side we can down there just to really try and match it up. I don't watch the Premiership, so I don't see much of how Exeter are playing, but I don't think they're having a great season.
Oh, they're doing all right.
Are they? Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
getting them mixed up. But so, but they historically have always been a side that brings a physical edge. So I'd we'll come on to pick the score, but your McNally's and stuff like that, just to have somebody there that can match up with those players. But yeah, hopefully it'll be a good game.
We had a couple of questions about specific positions, so we'll cover them as we go through team selection now. Just to say, from Exeter wise, they might mix and match, but obviously they've got quite a lot of Mulvihill rule considerations of their own with a lot of ex-Cardiff guys in there. Obviously, Faye Waboso, the headline grabber, but Dan John, Paul's son, is still in the squad there. Kane James, much written about on the bench as a play for St. Peter's, and there was one other as well, and I forget who it was now off the top of my head. Will Rigg of the Naught Loan Appearance Club. He's been starting at 12 quite a lot recently because their star signing Len Ikitau is picked up a knock over Christmas and I think is missing for this game as well. On to team selection then. Relatively decent fitness list still for Cardiff. So ruled out Ed Byrne, Ben Donnell. We still don't really know anything about his injury. Cardiff did an injury update last week and just didn't include him. So he doesn't exist anymore according to the injury update. We don't know about Johan Lloyd either at the moment. Theo Cabango, they said, is still continuing with rehab, has no end date still at this point, so we'll just wait and see on him. There's quite a few banged up guys, no obvious injuries, but quite a few bumps. I saw Alan Lawrence's nose posted on Instagram. That was quite a big bump that he got in that first second, and he was quite swelled up. And then the only other player who's definitely unavailable, there's Josh Adams has been posting his Dubai holiday all over Instagram. I'm not sure how pre-planned that was. I suppose it maybe is a reflection of the fact that he maybe didn't get away after the autumn internationals because he got that suspension and then was straight back into training. I don't know, but he's certainly be given the week off. So there's maybe a question mark around whether other guys like the ones mentioned in the Wales squad who are almost definites, your Azaratis, your Mans, your Ben Thomases, who've played a lot of rugby for us over the last few weeks, may also be given a week off and just aren't so Instagram heavy with the holidays that they've gone on. We're not too sure, but we'll assume that they're available for now until told otherwise and go from there. So prop wise, Frazier, start there. Loose head, we've got Reece Barrett, Corey Domachowski back involved, and then there is a Mulvihill rule consideration for Danny Southworth going back to Exeter as well. And then at tight head, Kieran Azarati, Javan Sebastian, and then whether Sam Wainwright might come into consideration with that Ulster game in mind if Azarati is going to be away with Wales. Which way would you go for your starters and bench there?
I'd probably go, I think, Javan Sebastian at tight head starting, I reckon, and then Wainwright on the bench. Well, there again, it can be either or really, but I do like Sebastian. And then loose head, I might go. I think Corey Domachowski to start. I don't know. He hasn't played for a long time. He's coming back from injury, so maybe give him a game. And then I think Southworth obviously. Mulvihill rule it. Maybe Reece Barrett can get a rest. He's still quite young. I mean, he obviously had a really good game on the weekend, and he's brilliant. But maybe he needs a little rest. So I'll probably go, Domachowski and Southworth.
Yes, I think so. Domachowski, I thought, looked like he hit the weights hard while he's been injured. I think it was a foot injury, but he looked sort of like big in his upper body, and he scrimmaged really well actually coming off the bench.
He did. He's got such a weird body type. His chest is probably like this my height or something. Yeah, it's bizarre.
Fordey, one of the questions we got then was about Evan Lloyd from Lloyd, who said, "What do you see as the future for Evan Lloyd? When he's come off the bench, he's been immense, but can scarcely remember him starting. I worry he might go elsewhere to get games." I mentioned earlier, I wondered if it was sort of a Belcher starts last week and then Lloyd this week scenario. But do we need to see a bit more of him at this point of his career, do you think?
Yeah, possibly. I wouldn't worry too much about him leaving because I think naturally the hooker position, any front row position, you get a lot of minutes, whether you're starting or on the bench. But yeah, I think when he's on it, he's fantastic, especially his physicality. And yeah, I think it's definitely an argument to have him start, kind of show what he's made of, especially to the Welsh coaches, and kind of get that physicality against a pretty physical Exeter team.
So what's your are you going with Lloyd to start, and then you've got Belcher, Dav Hughes, and somebody else who's getting desperately close to that Naught appearance loan club, Ethan Lewis.
I'd start Evan Lloyd, and I think it's difficult because I think for experience it'd be good to have Belcher on the bench, but then I do kind of feel for that Ulster game it might be worth having Dav Hughes on just to get a few minutes. But no, I'll stick with Belcher on the bench for that experience, especially if it's kind of tight going into the last 20 minutes.
Sounds good. Second row then, Simon. We mentioned Thornton doing well earlier. Knott and McNally was on the bench, maybe a well-earned rest after looking a bit leggy in that Ospreys game, it's fair to say. But which way would you go for your two starters and your bench this week with those three?
I'm still recovering from Fraser not picking Barrett's Siege Machine boot for a game where we'll probably need to get behind, and Fordey not picking Dav Hughes, even though you've got to feel for Dav Hughes. He scores a hat trick
Yeah.
out in Parma, and then he's kind of like, yeah, but you're still a bit, he's still third choice. But no, I totally agree with it with the selections. And also, I apologise. I got Exeter and Gloucester mixed up in the Premiership, which won't go down well in Exeter because I'm not going. So
Yeah.
everything.
Persona non grata in the West Country.
Apologies about that. I McNally and Thornton
Hmm.
would be my choice. I don't think McNally wants to rest more than one game. I don't think we necessarily need to rest him more than one game. I think he needed that rest, and it was good to have a bench where you see him coming on in the latter stages of games and think, oh, actually, a fresh McNally with 20 minutes left. How valuable is that? So, yeah, I would go. I think Thornton's done enough to just stay there, as you say. Dan, really good at line out. I think we're going to need to be good at set piece. So adds a bit of weight. I put those two together and then not on the bench. Donald's a real miss, though. I think that
Yeah.
versatility that Donald. I saw him walking around the ground. I don't know what his in. Do you know what his injury is? I can't remember.
No, it was some lower leg injury, I think, away at Zebra, wasn't it? He like hobbled off in the background, I think.
Yeah,
But they haven't said anything about him. He's been at a few signings and stuff, but no obvious like boot or bandage or anything like that. But
yeah,
I think specifically for that, looking at that Leinster game, and then even a bit further ahead to that South Africa tour, where we probably won't take many Wales internationals down there after straight on the back of the Six Nations, we could seriously do with him back fit for
yeah,
that because.
yeah.
That's that bit of depth and versatility that he adds would be great. Fraser then into the back row, obviously a plethora of options. Fordey and Simon, if you've got anything after as well, any strong disagreements. But there's Mann, Botham, Dan Thomas, Alan Lawrence, Tame Basham, Lucas de la Rue are there as well for the young option. What's your starting trio for this one, Fraser?
I think I'd start. I think I'd go. But yeah, both them, Basham, Thomas. I think give Man a rest, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, he's played a lot of rugby. Um, I think I'd maybe do. Yeah, Basham at 8, Thomas 7, James. What were both of them at 6? I think. Or yeah, I'm just throwing that out there. I haven't really given it a huge amount of thought, but I'm just thinking about yeah. Um,
Resting Lawrence as well there, I
Lawrence,
think,
yeah,
yeah.
Big Al having a rest after the weekend. You know, he passed the HIA, but you don't want to kind of put him through another hard game, and he plays so much, and we'll need him moving forward. So I think Big Al and Man kind of getting a bit of a rest.
There's
And
quite a bit of threat over the ball with that back row as well, which I think would be good if they can time it right and respond to however the breakdown is refereed on Sunday. That I think is good. I was a bit sceptical about Basham coming in because I think it does give away silly yellow cards and penalties. But I've been really impressed, and I think since coming back in, that we talked about the dynamism he offers, and I think he fits really well with the back row that we've got. So when you're moving, Man isn't playing, you still potentially got Basham, who is that kind of abrasive in your face, kind of start a fight in a phone box type player. So yeah, if he can keep his discipline, and he broadly has. I've been really impressed with it.
good stuff. Fraser, are we resting Lawrence to the point of not even on the bench, and then like De La Rue are on the bench with Man and Lawrence left at home, or would you have one of those two still on the bench as well, just for insurance reasons?
Mm, I'm gonna say go Lucas De La Rua. Why? Why? Because I haven't seen him play much, and it just give. I think Big Al definitely needs. I think he needs a rest. I would be advocating for that. I mean, it'd probably be good to have Man on the bench, but I think why not go De La Rua?
Sounds good to me. Fordey then coming into half backs, Mulder Davis and Bevan at 9, and then maybe I don't know. Is there a question mark over Sheedy? At 10, he's played a lot of rugby since coming back from the Autumn Internationals. We don't know if Lloyd is fit or not. Charlie says, "What are your thoughts on Rory Jennings getting a run at 10 after his little 10-minute cameo at the end on Saturday? Which way are you going at 9 and 10?"
Yeah, I thought Rory Jennings. It was quite a surprise when we saw him lining up at 10 and Ben Thomas at 12. you thought it would have been the other way around. I thought Jennings played really well in that final 10 minutes, but I think I've kind of got penciled it. I think Sheedy for the 10 shirt, I think it would be a big risk, especially for a team like Exeter to have either Jennings or Ben Thomas at 10 for a game like that. So I think, yeah, Sheedy still keeps hold of the 10 jersey. For me, I'd be quite keen to chuck Ellis Bevan in at 9, kind of allow him to kind of continue what he did after coming on last Saturday, and then probably look at Mulder on the bench to kind of again get those minutes, especially because since he's come back from injury, I think he's progressively got better. I think he didn't have his finest cameo against the Scarlets, but he's progressively got better, and he's just kind of getting back to grips with playing rugby after a month out. So I think, yeah, chuck Mulder in on the bench and then have Jennings on the bench as well for that kind of fly half inside centre cover.
If Lloyd were fit, would you consider Lloyd and give Sheedy a rest for this one, or are you sticking with Sheedy no matter what?
I think I'd stick with Sheedy no matter what. But yeah, if Lloyd is fit, I'd definitely throw him on the bench ahead of Jennings. Again, with that kind of versatility, I think it'd be a little bit of a risk once again to kind of throw in Johan Lloyd, who's been injured for the last month or so, to start against Exeter. I think, yeah, you'd have to slowly bring him in. But again, I'd chuck, yeah, Lloyd on the bench.
Simon into the centres then. We've got Ben Thomas, Steph Emmanuel. You're welcome to promote Rory Jennings to the 12 jersey if you so wish from the bench. And then we've got the sort of Smith Millard, maybe Grady question at 13. A couple of ways you can go there. Which way are you going for that midfield partnership?
Your pro Jennings agenda. And we all know why. I think
Club Ginger for life.
I would go Emmanuel and Smith. Just they played out in Paris. It wouldn't surprise me if they do that. I think Ben. There's part of me that just thinks keep picking Ben because he's playing so well. But just keep him in that groove. But I'm sure he needs a bit of a rest as well. So it's another good opportunity for Stefan. He never really let us down in that position. Looks solid there. So I feel a bit harsh on Millard because he's done more than we ever hoped or thought he would do in that 13 jersey. But I would just pick the more physical player at 13 for this one. I wouldn't be surprised to see Millard come back for the Benetton game. Maybe put him on the bench because he was on the bench on Saturday.
Yeah, he was in the 23 jersey
because he can cover that wing role as well.
He did come on right.
He
He was the one who come on
did.
for Schmidt when no one was looking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I go with those two.
Frazier then onto the wingers. That does make Millard available for the wing slot now potentially if we want to use him out there. We've obviously got Bowen and Stevens as the incumbents. Grady is there as well. Adams unavailable. Elijah Evans as your very young option to go that way. What's your duo out wide?
I think I'd go Mason Grady on one wing, and I mean I just love seeing Tom Bowen, but maybe save him and go with Ewan Stevens because Ewan Stevens is great on the weekends. I really enjoyed seeing him, and he seems to be getting back into the groove of things. But I mean, it's hard to deny Tom Bowen. It's really tricky. We've got quite a lot of options on the wing. I'm going to go Grady and Bowen.
I like that you talked yourself out.
Yeah.
That wasn't the answer I was expecting. Everything built up to Grady and Stevens, and then at the last minute, plot change.
Yeah, I think Bowen probably almost certainly stays now. I think Van Zils might have learned a lesson there about taking him out and dropping him back in. But yeah, it'd be good to see Grady come back in. And then Fordey, fullback, as we mentioned earlier, tough one, Beetham Winnett, young, halfpenny even. We didn't even mention him on last week's pod when we were talking about the team. Like, just one of the best fullbacks to have ever played the game. We don't even talk about him in the discussion. But who's wearing your 15 jersey?
I think I'll go for Winnett to start at 15. And I think there's probably scope then that you could look at potentially putting Beetham in the 23 shirt, especially with the way he's covered pretty much the whole back line, bar halfback for the start of the season. But yeah, no, I think I start winning like I touched on earlier, give him that kind of show it at 15 because he was very unlucky to miss out on the squad in the autumn to injury. That I'm sure he'll have a point to prove, and ideally, yeah, starting 15 this weekend be a good chance for him to prove that point.
Good stuff. Right, running through our team then. From 1 to 23, we've got Corey Domachowski, Evan Lloyd, Javon Sebastian, Josh McNally, Rory Thornton, James Botham, Dan Thomas, Tane Basham, Ellis Bevan, Callum Sheedy, Tom Bowen, Steph Emmanuel, Cornell Schmidt, Mason Grady, and Cam Winnett as the starting 15. And on the bench, Liam Belcher, Danny Southworth, Sam Wainwright, George Knott, Lucas De La Rua, Johan Mulder, Rory Jennings, and Jacob Beetham, which I think fits the bill of our mix and match team. It rests your likes of Azarati and Mann and Ben Thomas, obviously Adams away, while still being a competitive 23, especially if Exeter do switch up their side as well. Any more on the Exeter or any other business generally? Good stuff. Right. Well, thank you, Fraser.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers, Fordey.
Thank you.
And cheers, Simon.
Cheers, mate.
And thank you for listening as well. We'll be back next week looking back on that Exeter game ahead to that massive one against Benetton in the URC, and we'll hopefully have some Wales squad selection news as well. But until then, thank you for listening. Goodbye.